Hi, Year 4. So today for your maths, we are going to be writing hundredths as decimals. So yesterday, we looked at using a place value grid to convert tenths fractions into decimals. So here's a reminder of our place value grid to include decimals. We have our ones, then we have our tens, and then we have our hundreds. Now they are all whole numbers. Once we get past the decimal, we are looking at fractions. We're looking at parts of numbers. So here, after the decimal, we have our tenths. So that's the fractions that we were looking at yesterday, when a whole of something is divided into 10 equal parts. We're now going to look at hundredths. And that's when a whole of something has been divided into 100 equal parts. Now, earlier in the week, we did look at tenths and hundredths. So we are today going to be looking at hundredths as decimals. So as a recap from yesterday, we looked at converting tenths fractions to decimals, and we did that by looking at our place value grid. So here we have 4 tenths. There are no whole numbers in this fraction. So in our place value grid, we put 0 in the ones column. We don't need to do 0 for the others. Then we looked at how many tenths the fraction was telling us. So we looked at the numerator, and that is 4. So we put 4 into our tenths column in our place value grid, and that is 0.4. So 4 tenths is 4 over 10, or 0.4. Again, here we have 3 tenths. There are no whole numbers. So we put 0 in the ones column. How many tenths are there? Good, there's 3. So we put 3 in the tenths column. So 3 tenths can be written as 0.3. To convert hundredths fractions, we are going to look at our place value grid again. So here we have 4 hundredths, not 4 tens, but 4 hundredths. That's 4 out of 100 equal parts. Again, there are no wholes in this fraction, so we're going to put 0 in the 1, and there are 4 hundredths. So 4 went into the hundredths column. Now, we have 0 point something 4. There are 0 tenths, so we have to put 0 as a placeholder and then do our hundredths. So 4 hundredths is written as 4 over 100, or 0.04. We have to remember to put in our placeholder into the tenths because there are no tenths. So it's really important that we do that when we're looking at hundredths. Okay, here we have 7 hundredths. There are no wholes, so we're putting 0 into the ones. How many hundredths are there? There's 7. So we've got 7 in our hundredths column. And what's that thing that we need to remember when we're looking at hundredths? Can you tell me? We have to put in our placeholder into the tenths. So 7 hundredths is 7 over 100, or 0.07. So can you have a go at putting this into your place value grid? So you have 2 hundredths. How many ones are there? How many tens are there? And how many hundredths are there? Have a go at doing that now and write 2 hundredths as a decimal in your place value grid. Okay, so there are 0 ones, 0 tenths, and 2 hundredths. So 2 hundredths written as a decimal is 0.02. Let's have a go at 9 hundredths. So in your place value grid, write 9 hundredths as a decimal. How many wholes are there, and how many tenths are there, and how many hundredths are there? Pause the video now and have a go at writing 9 hundredths as a decimal. Okay, there are no wholes, so we put 0 in the ones column. There are no tenths, so we put 0 in the tenths column as a placeholder. And there are 9 hundredths, so we've put 9 in the hundredths column. So 9 hundredths is the same as 0.09. Okay, let's have another go. You have 6 hundredths here, so the numerator is 6. Where is that going in your place value grid? How many ones are there? How many tenths are there? And how many hundredths are there? Pause the video now and put 6 hundredths into your place value grid. Okay, so you should have 0 in your ones because there are 0 wholes. Then you have your decimal point. Then you have 0 tenths as your placeholder, and there are 6 hundredths. So 6 is going in the hundredths column. So 6 hundredths is 0.06. Well done. And one more. If you have 1 hundredth, what does that look like as a decimal? Pause the video now and put that into your place value grid. Okay. So there are 0 wholes, 0 ones, remember your decimal point. There are 0 tenths, and there is 1 hundredth. So 1 hundredth is the same as 0.01. Well done. Now here we have 40 hundredths. Now this is where we have to think back to our lesson where we converted tenths and hundredths. So we need to see what 40 hundredths is the same as. There are 0 wholes still, there's 0 ones. But 40 hundredths is the same as 4 tenths. 40 hundredths is the same as 4 tenths. So we write that as 0.4. We have to go back to our lesson where we converted hundredths into tenths. Now what we did is we divided both numbers by 10. So you do 100 divided by 10, which is 10, converted into tenths. And you also do 40 divided by 10, which is 4. So we have 4 tenths. Dividing by 10 is the same as taking off one of the zeros in this fraction. So we ended up with 0.4. This one, we have 20 hundredths. There are still 0 ones, there's 0 wholes, but there are 20 hundredths, which is the same as 2 tenths. So 20 hundredths is the same as 2 tenths. So as a decimal, we write that as 0.2. Here we have 23 hundredths. So we have to see what that looks like as a decimal. As a decimal, that looks like 0.23. So I've put my tenths in my tenths column and my hundredths in the hundredths column. Let's have a look at another one. 45 hundredths looks like 0.45. 0.45. So that numerator is going into the tenths and the hundredths column. 67 hundredths. Pause the video now and see if you can put 67 hundredths into your place value grid. Okay, so you should have 0.67 because we've put the 67 into the hundredths and tenths column. Let's try this one, 13 hundredths. See if you can put that into your place value grid and pause the video now. Okay, you have 0 wholes, 0 ones. You have 3 hundredths and 1 tenth. So 13 hundredths is the same as 0.13. Okay, try 36 hundredths. Pause the video now and put 36 hundredths into your place value grid. Okay, so you should have 0 ones, your decimal point, and 3 tenths and 6 hundredths. So it's 0.36. Well done. Now we're going to have a look at what happens when you have a whole number as well as your fraction. So here we have 1 whole. So we're going to put 1 into our ones column because we have 1 whole number. Then we have 2 hundredths. Now there's no tenths in there, so we've put the 0 in our tenths and we put the 2 into our hundredth column. So 1 and 2 hundredths is the same as 1.02. Have a look at another one. We have 2 wholes. So where is the 2 going to go? Pause the video now and put your 2 in the correct column. Good. 2 is going into the ones column. We have no tenths in this number, so we put 0 in the tenths column. How many hundredths are there? What number are you going to put in the hundredths column? Good, you should put 7 in the hundredths column. So 2 and 7 hundredths is the same as 2.07. Have a go at this one. You have 3 and 31 hundredths. Now, if you've got 30 hundredths, you need to see how many tens that is and how many hundredths that is. Pause the video now and see if you can put that into your place value grid. Good. So you should have 3 in your ones column, your decimal point, then 3 in your tenths column and 1 in your hundredths. So 3 and 31 hundredths is the same as 3.31. Ignore that. Good, well done. Okay, I have a little question for you here. Here we have some counters in a place value grid. Can you tell me how many ones there are, how many tenths there are, how many hundredths there are, and show that as a decimal number? What could you do to write that as a decimal? So pause the video now, write out these sentences, tell me how many ones, how many tenths, how many hundredths, and write it as a decimal. Good, so you should have 1 ones, 6 tens, 3 hundredths, and as a decimal, that is 1.63. 1.63. Good, well done. Okay, here you have a bar model and it's split into hundredths. There are 100 equal parts. So to work that out as a fraction, you have to count how many there are shaded in. So pause the video now and count how many are shaded in, and you're writing that as a fraction. Good. You should have that written as 25 100ths. 25 hundredths, because there are 25 out of the 100 equal parts. Now, see if you can write that as a decimal for me. You can go back and use your place value grid and write 25 hundredths as a decimal. Good. You should have 0.25. Okay, what you're going to do now for me is you are going to have a go at the sheets in your home learning pack. Now, this first one is very similar to the tenths one that we did yesterday. Each square is split into 100 equal parts because we're looking at hundredths. And you have to count up the shaded parts, write it as a fraction, and then write it as a decimal. So let's have a go at the first one together. Count how many are shaded in. So pause the video now and count how many are shaded in. Good. You should have 26 out of 100. Now, to write that as a decimal, you could use your place value grid and put it into your place value grid. And that is 0.26. So your 26 is going after your decimal point. Have a go at completing the rest. You can complete this on your sheet, or you can pause the video now and write the fractions along with their decimals. Good, let's have a go at looking at the answers. Okay, so in the third one, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 72 hundredths. So that's 72 out of the 100 equal parts. And to write that as a decimal, it's 0.72. The next one, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 48 out of 100 equal parts, 48 hundredths. To write that as a decimal, it's 0.48. Well done. Here we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 93 hundredths, 93 out of 100 equal parts. And as a decimal, that is 0.93. The numerator is going straight after the decimal point. And this last one, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 56 hundredths. And as a decimal, that is written as 0.56. Right, well done Year 4s for having a go at that and converting your hundredth fractions into decimals. There are some more sheets in your pack so you can continue practicing your learning. Well done and have a lovely half term.